Hi, we're with Sara Kaviar, who teaches humanities and technology at a middle school in Los Angeles. And I'm speaking to her about a project she's been doing with Minecraft. So why don't we start with just telling us what it is you've been doing with your students?
This year is our global studies year. And so 7th and 8th graders are learning about 7 major world religions. In the past, we have done projects in which they've written about these, researched about global religions, even done some interesting little games. But this year we decided to add a new element, which was having them work in the 3D virtual sandbox called Minecraft. And specifically, we had them work in a form of Minecraft called Minecraft EDU, which is a format of Minecraft set up for schools and for teachers to allow teachers a little bit more control over what happens in that virtual space. So the first thing our students did was they researched approximately 7 major world religions and learned about sacred sites, core beliefs, key people, key events, and we had quite a bit of work in class in which we discussed all of these. They took their learning into a new place and demonstrated their knowledge by creating games. So the first thing that we did was we did a number of field trips so that students could actually see various sacred sites. We went to the Los Angeles Cathedral, we went to St. Sophia's, we went to some Hindu temples, we visited some Buddhist temples, and a Sikh Gurdwara, along with the Islamic Center of Southern California. So the students could get a sense of the sacred spaces. Then the students selected a site that could be an international site, it didn't have to be a site in Los Angeles, that they wanted to build. So in this virtual environment, you actually work with space in something that feels a little bit more close to reality than building something like a diorama or something out of modeling clay. So in this space, in Minecraft, the characters, the avatars, are about 2 blocks high, and they can build blocks up as high as they'd like. So most of the students built virtual spaces that were quite large. In fact, I think with the number of students that we had, and the way we laid out this world, I think we were working with something that could have been the equivalent of 4 square miles. So the wonderful thing about building in Minecraft is that you can move around in this world and be in this world as if you exist in this world. Okay, so the students built sacred sites, and the very first thing they had to do was they had to really plan on a blueprint and lay out the site so that it would be representative of the real site, as close as they could get it in something like Minecraft. So that took a lot of collaboration and planning. Many kids who use Minecraft, just play the game of Minecraft, they oftentimes don't necessarily lay out their plans as precisely or as carefully as we needed them to do. They can build because they don't have so many people in the world at the same time. They don't worry about running into somebody. But we had 40 students in this world, so we really had to make sure they were spaced out well enough that they wouldn't run into each other with their large plans. So a fair amount of time was spent having the students really lay out on grid paper how they were going to build, and then they started to build together. This took a lot of collaboration, deciding who was going to build what, and how close they were going to make it look to the real thing. Many students got very close, and some students took liberties and went maybe a fanciful direction. So once they had their sacred site built, that was also based on research, so understanding, for instance, what are the pieces of a Hindu temple, what would you see inside a cathedral, what would you see inside the Grand Mosque in Mecca. So they really knew their sites well. Once they built their sites, they started to plan how they were going to play their game. So the whole object of this was to create a game inside this site that a player could play who was unfamiliar with global religions. So, and yet still have it be fun and competitive. So the students figured out the type of game that they wanted to make in this virtual space, and then we had them rethink with the notion that the person playing is going to need some help along the way. So they had to figure out how to keep a person involved, engaged, and not want to quit if they didn't know the answers. So students got very creative in coming up with the type of game that they created, as well as where they were going to get their hints from, how they were going to perhaps survive a wrong answer and go on to something correct. So as the students were building their games, they were really working collaboratively again together. They were doing some really interesting problem creation as well as problem solution. And we tested the games along the way. We were able to test on our sixth graders here at our school, who most of them who did the testing were actually familiar with how to move in Minecraft, but they had never seen anything like this before. So they gave us some really, really good feedback, and the students were able to make changes before they actually tested it on their parents in an evening event that we had here.
So that describes what it was you did, and you dropped a couple of strong hints about why you did it. Just a little bit more detail about why go to the trouble of building a virtual world as for a classroom.
The point of building a virtual world, we offered this, first of all, as a choice. So not all students had to do this. Our project was to build a game of some kind. So some students chose board games, some students chose scavenger hunts, Jeopardy-style games, but about a third of our students chose Minecraft. The reason we wanted them to work in a virtual space is because if they were going to be building something, we didn't want it just to be a small model. We want, in Minecraft, you can walk around, you can look up, things can tower above you. We wanted them to be able to move in a virtual environment, to be able to accomplish all that their game provided, yet without having to leave their seats. Secondly, Minecraft, for most of our students, was an environment that they'd experienced before, although not Minecraft EDU, and they already really liked that environment. It's highly engaging. There are so many people that play Minecraft that we wanted to bring something that the students knew and loved into the classroom. Thirdly, one of our objects was to entice other students to try Minecraft who had never tried it before. And I think you might see fairly typically a lot of boys tend to take on video games or building games like this, and we were really hoping to engage some of our girls who'd never done it before in this process. And we had a number of students who'd never tried Minecraft before jump right in and become experts at it very, very quickly. Having a virtual world to build in, I think, is supremely engaging. It's more engaging than having, as I said before, just modeling clay or a diorama that they built, because they immerse themselves in it. I have never, in all the time I've been teaching, seen kids so focused. They got right to work as soon as they got into the classroom. They felt like they were having fun rather than what they might call learning, although there was plenty of learning happening. They came in at lunch, before school, after school. They were amazingly engaged, very focused on finishing what they had set out to do. And they came up with the most interesting games. They were given quite free rein in terms of what kind of game they needed to build. They came up with unbelievable ideas and ways to support their players.
Well, you came up with some splendid articulated answers for what and why. Now about how. I imagine there may be a middle school or even an elementary school teacher who's watching this who thinks, gee, I'd like to do that. I have no idea where to start and how to go about it. What kind of advice would you have for those folks?
Well, the advice I'd have for someone who's thinking about starting a Minecraft server, there are a couple of ways to go, but the way that we went was using Minecraft EDU. And that is a form of Minecraft created by Joel Levin in New York. It's licensable by schools. It's very simple to use, although there is a learning curve involved. I had known about Minecraft for some time. My own daughter plays Minecraft, so I was pretty familiar about how to work in Minecraft. I had no idea initially how to run a server. It actually is so much easier than it sounds. You can download what's called the client. You can download a server. I ran the server really off of my own laptop in my classroom. So it only slowed my laptop down a little bit. So running the server, you just simply download the software for that, and then you pick the kinds of things you want your students to be able to do. You have a lot of control as a teacher that you can keep from your students having that same sort of control. Here are some things that we experienced in this process of learning how to work in this world. The first thing I did actually was I started a task force of about 10 students who knew Minecraft really, really well, and they offered, or actually they were agreeable to coming in and being my task force, creating the world, setting it up for other students to come in several weeks later to start playing. So one of the things as a teacher you can pretty well rely on is having experts in your classroom. Minecraft is so pervasive that you will find kids, I'm sure, from anywhere from probably second grade all the way through college that know and are familiar and are interested in Minecraft. So as a teacher, you don't have to be an expert at all. The teacher controls in Minecraft EDU are really easy to use. They're very well explained in your teacher panel. But there might be some trial and error. So I recommend people who are starting out to create a little world and then just play around with it and see what can happen in that world. Your ability to create worlds, you're unlimited. You can create as many worlds as you want. And what I mean by that is really your playing field. So let's say a school purchases the license for Minecraft EDU, and one teacher wants to use it for humanities, and another teacher wants to use it for math, and another for science, and another for art, which is probably what we're going to be doing down the road. They're all in separate worlds, so you're not going to run into each other. You can have a tutorial world for teaching yourself and teaching students how to use Minecraft. So there's so many possibilities. As a teacher, you're able to send messages to students. If you see students doing things that you don't think are so good and you haven't worked that out in advance so that they don't do it to begin with, you can freeze them. You can move them from the place that they're in to the place that you are. You can post assignments for students so that they know what they're doing when they get into the world. You can also help them build. Some of the things that I did ultimately with my students, when they knew they wanted to build something so huge that didn't have a lot of fine detail in it, I could build those things for them, given the corners, in a matter of seconds, leaving them free to do some of the finer details. And you'll see from some of the screenshots there, and especially, for instance, with the Grand Mosque and some of the other buildings like the Buddhist temples, there's amazingly fine detail that they put in this environment. Teachers can also keep control of who's doing what in the world. You can look at how students are talking to each other. You can be in what's called spectate mode, which means you're there but they can't see you, if you feel like that is a good idea. One of the very first things, though, that we did before we even started building was we had a meeting in which we talked about positive behavior in a sandbox, which is what this essentially is. Like, what do we do? How do we work together? How do we support each other? If you accidentally break something, which is a possibility, what do you do about that? How can you make amends for that? So the kids really knew socially what our expectations were in going in. There still is a little monkeying around and being silly, but it was really kept to a minimum. And our Minecraft task force also were people that were the go-to people in the classroom. If students needed to figure out how to make, for instance, a cart move on a roller coaster, they could talk to any of the Minecraft experts in the room. I didn't have to do that at all. I actually got pretty good at most of this over time, but we could hit the ground running with student experts. So I was just there to sort of maintain enthusiasm, perseverance, and probably a sense of decorum.
This is so wonderful. Thank you so much. And I know that there are teachers out there watching this who I think are going to be inspired to go out and do it themselves. So there you go. Good luck in the future.
Thank you. Can I add one more little thing, Howard?
Of course.
We used it in an unusual way for humanities in terms of delivering and having students really deliver a lot of content. But I see its application is absolutely perfect for classes that I mentioned, like science or math or even art. Although you're working with blocks, if you do a large enough scale, those blocks can become almost like the points in a pointillist painting. So it's really, the sky's the limit. The size of the space you're allowed to work in is huge, or as small as you'd like. So almost every subject area can be touched on in this. They also have components where things can go. You can do circuitry, you can do sounds, music. There's so much possibility within this field.
Sounds to me like you ought to write a book or a wiki
Maybe.
or a video. Good luck. We'll look for it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Take care.
Okay, you too.